Hi, I'm Spencer Krause. I've been building robots for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of interesting things, and I've heard a lot of interesting stories. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is a place where my peers and I can relax, have a drink, and talk about some of the crazier things we've seen at work and some of the experiences we've had that have gotten us to where we are today. Subscribe today to join the collaboration. Welcome to the Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Krause. Our guest today is Audrey Russo. Audrey is the president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Tech Council. Audrey, welcome to the pod.
Oh, great to be here.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
No, this is awesome. I can't wait for us to dig in.
Me too. So you came into a president and CEO position. What was that like? I started my own company, so I'm interested to kind of get your take on taking
interesting, right?
ownership of the role.
Yeah. Wow. So, I came out of a company called Maya Design.
Cool.
And there I was like CFO, COO, and before that I was at Alcoa. Came to Pittsburgh from a company called Reynolds Metals. So worked in tech, worked in business development, application development, systems kind of thing, ERP, you name it. And I kept trying to get out of Pittsburgh, believe it or not. I tried to get out of Pittsburgh 3 times.
Where'd you go?
I didn't go anywhere. I got pulled into Pittsburgh.
As we all do.
Got pulled into Pittsburgh. Thought after Alcoa I would go back to New York, and then didn't. Got a job working at Maya Design, and opened my eyes to sort of Pittsburgh. I said, all these smart people, this amazing city, so much potential. I've never lived in a community like this, at least for a long time. Not back in New York, maybe. And worked at Maya, had a chance to look around and see the community, get to understand. Because when I worked at Alcoa, I traveled. Most of my time was out of the city. So it was just like on the weekends or a couple of days here and there. Didn't really get a flavor other through the eyes of my daughter. And she was young at that time. And I got to know sort of the neighborhood, live in the East End, got to know, some of the schools and doing mom kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I worked for Maya Design I sort of developed this appetite for like what the greatness of Pittsburgh was, and could be. So I sort of got sucked into that kind of allure of the region. Then at Maya Design, they sold part of the company, and it was really like another inflection point. And I thought, okay, what's next? And then I got tapped on the shoulder to take over the job at the Pittsburgh Tech Council. No one knew me in the community. And
how'd you get recruited for that?
Someone knew me and said, I think this would be a cool job for you. And I went,
no one except that person.
I said, that job? I don't want that job, right? I just didn't even know what that was.
Well, I can't imagine going to like a nonprofit after, working for Alcoa and like a legendary company like Maya Design. I mean, that's an interesting, transition.
Right, but I've always been interested in the intersection of public-private partnership. Cool. I have a master's in public administration and economics.
Had you done anything with it before that? Nice.
I mean, I've always been civic-minded. Always have been on boards and communities, have been involved in politics at, sort of like a local level. So I always had that kind of propensity of interest. But I thought, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to leverage some of the things that I've always been interested in and be a part of this community. So landed in this job and, became president and CEO. We took the organization apart just like, many people do when they, start something new or they're doing sort of like a turnaround. And that was the opportunity of what I had to do, and learned a lot about the community. It took me like a year to try to figure out who to know, who did this, what was the legacy, who were the players, because our relationships are with all the elected officials, both locally and those who are in Washington.
Sure.
And understanding policy and strategy, understanding growth, working with the universities and their leadership, and then understanding who's sort of at the doorstep of working in tech and innovation. So for me, that was like being in Candyland. I just got to meet the smartest people who were doing things against all odds, and getting a chance to see where all the gaps were.
That's what Kirsting said about the job.
Did he?
Yeah, he was in awe about like all the intelligent people he got to work with, and named a bunch of them by name. Like, I think Free Markets is one he kind of remembers
Right.
particularly fondly.
He was there when that all happened, and I was
Yeah,
not.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I've only ever had to deal with them from the having clients that want to pay us through Ariba side. It's brutal.
It is brutal. We use them. We
not
use
not
them
a great
at Alcoa,
system from
right?
the vendor side.
I know. It's like it's being at the horse races, right? And you don't even know who you're competing against.
Yeah, for sure. Or I mean, like, really, it's just a lot of procedure to get paid. I mean, like the fact that you've got to submit your invoices a certain way.
Right.
You know, it's well, I mean, you got to have an administrator submit your invoices a certain way.
I think it's changed way since then, but
I'm sure, right? Like, I mean, I think for its time, it was particularly innovative and probably an improvement over what was around. I mean, I have clients that still pay me with paper checks, right? And it's like, I didn't realize people still did that. You know, like every time I get one, I'm like, huh.
Fascinating, isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly, right? I'm like, huh, I haven't seen one of these in a while.
I know. Or I have like checks every once in a while. I have to write a check to someone, and I have
them
to
for
like
my
find
personal bank account. I don't think we even have them for SKA or Attention Dynamics as bank accounts.
Good.
Yeah.
But I keep like taking them out of series because I'll have boxes and I don't remember the sequence.
Yeah.
And my credit union, which I'm still use the Alcoa Credit Union, which
That's
I
awesome.
love, and they'll say your sequence. You went from like 1,100 to 1,200, and there were no
Your
checks
banker
in between.
Rides you about that?
Well, it was just like, just want you to know.
Yeah.
You've skipped around a little bit. I go,
they're
yeah,
like,
because I don't
just so
write
you
checks.
know. Yeah. No, I've got like in my personal account, it's a USAA account, and I've got maybe like 4 checkbooks from like 2012, and they're none of. I mean, I don't remember. Like, if I have to write a check, I'll just grab whatever one's closest, and they're probably gonna last me the rest of my life.
Yeah, same here. Same here. It's adorable.
Nice.
So back to your original question, right? You're a founder. You're running something.
Yeah.
I think the difference in between our roles is that I went in and took something over,
Right.
and sort of changed
But it sounds
it.
like it's not that different in the sense that you still put your mark on it and you tried to make it better and more efficient. And, I mean, you probably saw things that were broken and were like, okay, well, this has got to change. I don't like that.
It took me like 3 years to do a change because all these different organizations were part of the Tech Council. So I took them apart.
So a lot of the members were resistant to it.
No, we had different companies that are nested under the Tech Council.
Oh, okay. I got
So there was a group called Pennsylvania Nano Center. There was a group called Doyle Center for Manufacturing. There was a group called Catalyst Connection, which is still around.
Yep.
And I untethered them.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I just separated them, and Catalyst Connection went off on their own.
And the other one's folded.
And couldn't survive. Yeah, tried to nurture them and to understand what the win was.
Why did you cut them loose? Like, what was the reason?
Because the mothership of the Tech Council sort of lost their way. They lost their way in terms of what the value prop was. Like, who were we? What were we trying to do? And we were just like spread across all these different organizations and provided support for them. And we lost sight of the vision of the Tech Council. So I tried to take it to become a business and said, we got to understand what our customers want. We can't just continue to be allocating resources across these different organizations. We lost sight of it. So I'd never really been in that kind of world. So I only knew what's the business, who's the customer, where are we winning, where are we, we're not efficient. What are people saying? What needs to happen? How does that align with where we want to move the needle? So it took a good 2 to 3 years to really figure out, what our assets are. And of course, changing the team around. I had to do that because people were not, they were living inside work that was different. And it was different than where I wanted to sort of take it to. And I think the difference in this role that I have is that we have a lot of stakeholders and we have a lot of people who have opinions. And many of those people who have opinions are not necessarily consumers of the product, which is very different than when you are starting a company. You're looking at your customer, right? You're looking at customer acquisition, how you can get them.
Yeah. Well, if you're smart, you're considering their point of view and where they're coming from and how you.
Well, you should be, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I did. I was trying to understand what do they want? What did they like? What did they not like? And that was hard because there were people who worked in the organization that weren't used to that kind of view. They were like, I'm just doing my job, right? And I'm like, no, we're going to measure outcomes. We're going to look at revenue. We're going
Did anyone quit when you started to introduce those kind of metrics?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of people don't want to work.
And a lot of people don't, even today, they will not fit into our team if they don't have that kind of approach to work and the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So I think I brought that to the organization. Every person has their own, quote unquote, P&L.
Yep.
They're responsible for it. It rolls up. We look at the numbers. Every person in the organization knows.
How do you attach those to individuals, though? That seems
we
challenging.
Do. Everyone has.
Well, I know, I get that, but like, how are you doing it? Like, give me an example.
So we have metrics.
Yeah.
So we have metrics. We have organizational metrics, and they're all tied to our pillars. And we have pillars, and our pillars are like public policy and advocacy, people and talent. This is all tied to our members, our customers, and business development. So like when I help you, right?
Sure.
And we measure that, and we only measure it if it has an outcome, not just, hey, will you talk to Spencer kind of thing.
Yeah.
But more like, was there an outcome from that?
When you say an outcome, you mean a conversion.
A conversion, right. A conversion to something. Mm-hmm. And we measure that. And we measure, we have like all these different kind of measures, whether it's professional development, speaking engagements, any way that we're penetrating the quote unquote
You've got to
marketplace.
have like loss centers, though, I would imagine, right? Where like you can't really attach that to a P&L. Like, I mean, you've got to have like, accountants, right? For instance, like
yeah, and we embed them.
Yeah.
We embed them. That's our overhead, right? And so then we calc that overhead.
Okay, so you don't hold an accountant responsible to I mean, you hold them responsible to a standard.
We hold them responsible to a standard for sure. But believe it or not, I've tried to even finagle my CFO to have to do something that drives outcomes.
Sweet.
And revenue. Yeah.
I'm curious how you're doing that, because I would like to run my business more that way too.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely do it. We definitely, because we do things like we sell insurance. And, it used to be back in the day, the Tech Council was really predominant revenue came from selling insurance. But when the Affordable Care Act came, to be, it changed the way that we could sell insurance. And I didn't want us to be an insurance company.
I see.
What
were the differences that because I didn't really follow it. Like, what did it change about how you could operate? Like, what before the Affordable Care Act versus after?
Oh, we used to get a tremendous amount of revenue from selling.
No, I get that, but like, what changed practically where you could no longer make money on that?
Oh,
product?
Well, the Affordable Care Act pushed people who were sole proprietors and small businesses to the marketplace. And when they went to the marketplace, we were no longer allowed to do that. So that's number one.
So you were just banned from selling insurance.
And then the second thing is we weren't banned, but that model of where we aggregated people together.
Yeah.
So let's say we took SKA and we took, Hellbender and we took all these other companies. We used to be able to pool them into one pool. So we would have like 5,000 individuals and you were all under one pool and you got rated as one 5,000 person pool. Now I can only go to SKA.
Yeah.
And you have 5 people.
But you still have like PEOs, right, that manage to do that in some capacity.
Some PEOs tend to do some of that, but PEOs tend to do things that include payroll, right? But
they're still buying insurance as a sort of a
right, but they're clustering everything. So if there's a loss in one, they're making it up.
Okay, I see. So they're effectively self-insuring.
Well, they might be self-insuring, they might not be self-insuring, but they are definitely amalgamating all these services that they provide. So they might provide HR services, payroll, insurance. I was not doing that.
Well, I get that. But I mean, specifically, so if you're doing all the other stuff, then you can afford the assurance as a loss leader is what you're saying.
You could.
It's not. It might not be making you money, but it's a loss leader for that.
But for us, it was not a loss leader. It was definitely back then. It was a cash cow.
Profit center. Yeah.
It was a huge profit center. It was unencumbered money too, so you could use it however you want. It was unrestricted.
Nice.
So the world changed the organization upside down because we weren't making that kind of millions of dollars that were coming out of health insurance that was unencumbered.
Brutal.
Yeah. And you never know. Like, we hope one day that it reverses itself. Who knows with the current administration?
Yeah. I mean, that would be nice as a member company too.
It would be amazing. Yeah. It would be amazing, right? It would be amazing because now as we look at the work that we're doing, ahead and in Department of Defense, looking at data centers, looking at all this other stuff, that money would be used as seed money for us to do even more meaningful work.
I mean, you got to finance it somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you know that Collaborative with Spencer Krause now has a merch store? Please go to cwskmerch.com for the latest in CWSK styles. You can get a hoodie, like the one I'm wearing, t-shirts, hell, we even have whiskey glasses. Everything in the store has custom art that our team worked really, really hard on. So go ahead and show your support for them, me, and the rest of the CWSK team by going to cwskmerch.com today. Better yet, support yourself and use discount code PODCAST10, all one word, all uppercase, for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for your support and enjoy the rest of the show. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com. So I guess you guys are a nonprofit, right?
Well, the mothership is a 501c6.
Okay.
A C6 is a non-charitable nonprofit. It allows us to be lobbyists.
Oh, cool.
So,
but the nonprofit just means you can't retain earnings, like you have to pay it out every year, effectively, or what's
no?
Okay.
I have retained earnings.
Oh,
I have retained earnings.
How do nonprofits work? I guess.
So when you have a 501c6,
yeah.
a 501c6 allows you, as I just said, to be a non-charitable. So, for example, you wouldn't write a check to make a donation to the Tech Council and expect to get a tax deduction from that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You don't. The 501c6, that's not it because you have a
501c3
lobbying on.
501c3 is the charitable nonprofit.
And I've created a 501c3.
Oh, cool.
And that's nested under the 501c6. They're all, the P&Ls are all rolled up into one. So then I have a nonprofit now, and it's called 40 by 80. That's the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh.
Oh, cool.
And that's where we do work, where we help with, mentoring kids. We do, STEM programs. Excuse me. We do.
So I could deduct that on my taxes if I donated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You could write checks to us there.
Sweet.
And we get philanthropy that invests in programs. We've got an entrepreneur sort of concierge kind of program in there. And that's all our nonprofit. Then we also have a for-profit. And the for-profit allows us to sell insurance, any of the profit from that, as well as advertising. So we do advertising. You have to pay for, taxes on advertising.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how we're sort of structured.
Cool. No, that's awesome. You said you have a for-profit just for the advertising.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to. I mean, because advertising is
otherwise you can't do it at all.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't.
But I've seen like billboards for UPMC, right? And they're technically a nonprofit. Does that mean they've got a for-profit subsidiary to do those billboards?
Yeah, they might. I don't know. I'm sure they have, complex, structures.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah, I mean, they might.
Yeah.
But they're doing their own advertising. I'm selling advertising, so it's very different. Do you see what I'm saying? You can come to me as SKA Robotics. You can come to me, and I can do advertising. You can be on our podcast. You can be on our magazines, and that's advertising.
I see. But to be able to earn a profit on that product, so membership revenue is okay. Advertising revenue is considered somehow verboten for the 501c6.
Right.
That's interesting. I know so little about nonprofits.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. And
so the cool thing is with the amazing team that I have, we really run it like a business.
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah, which is, we're frugal. We know that people, work hard to pay us to be members. And we're really got, the horizon is on those measurements and that impact.
Yeah, well, and you guys have been awesome. I mean, as a member company, especially with the work we've been doing together recently, it's just been
I mean, if we have connections, why not help you, right? Why not help you open the doors? I mean, that's also our philosophy. If we can open the doors for people that can't find pathways. That's our responsibility.
Right. Well, and I mean, again, it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all ships. I mean, I think when you help your local business community, like your business community helps you, and so.
Well, you help everyone.
Right.
When you thrive, we all thrive. And
Right.
I don't mean that in some like Pollyanna kind of way.
Yeah.
But I mean, you materially help
Right.
people. You buy things. You hire people. You
Spend
generate
money at restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
And you add to that. And that's what we need. And that's what we have sort of wrestled with. This region has really wrestled with that kind of reinvention for a long time.
How do you mean?
Meaning, like, I think one of the things I remember when I first moved to Pittsburgh, people would say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you moved here."
These are your friends from New York.
No, these are local people here.
Oh, interesting. I wonder why they would say that.
They would say that because they felt
city.
like because they felt like, well, Pittsburgh, we're losing, we're not winning, we're not growing, we're not punching above our weight.
I mean, we are though. I mean, I guess, but maybe
Well, back in 2001, I think
that's when my family left originally.
Is that when they left?
Yeah,
right.
It's 2001.
So,
I remember because the towers went down like right after. So
in 9/11, that's when I moved here.
Easy to remember. Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's when I moved here.
So we crossed.
We did.
Yeah.
And, people would say, "Oh, my kids are all leaving. They don't stay. There's no jobs. Are there really tech jobs here? There's no jobs for them." That used to be just a common conversation that I would have when I would take my daughter to school and meet other families, even in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my whole family except me lives in New York City. I mean, my immediate family, my brother and sister and parents, and I get some of that. Like, they're like, "Why do you still live there? It's so crappy." I'm like, "It's great. Like, it's affordable. I can, it's just a perfect place to have a business. And like, there's amazing talent pool if you're in robotics right now. I mean, we're attracting people from all over the country and all over the world.
But even your family is saying that to you.
Right. I mean, they've kind of chilled out. Like, I think they've seen like my company growing, and they've seen, just things going all right for Pittsburgh in general, and they've been reading the news articles and frankly, like some of it's like stuff that, we put there, with marketing intent, which is okay too. But I mean, they're buying into all that, and they're like, "Oh, Pittsburgh's actually pretty nice." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." It's been nice. Like the other day, I went to this is a little bit different. But the other day, I went to Lawrenceville, and I was on the phone with my dad, and this is maybe like a year ago, but I like it because it's how it's changed as a city. So I'm like, "Hey, I got to go. I just got to Lawrenceville. I got a meeting coming up." And he's like, "Is Lawrenceville like still like kind of a dangerous place to be?" And I'm like, "No, it's like the nicest neighborhood in Pittsburgh. It's like super."
Does he
super
come
bougie.
to visit you anymore?
Occasionally. I think the last time they were here might have been like 5 years ago.
You need to get them back.
Maybe. I mean, how would you lure them out if you're me?
Come to see you. Show them what you're up to. Show them your business.
Yeah, fair enough. They have not seen the new office yet.
Yeah, they need to see what you put up for Discovery Day and the things that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, that was like a one-day pavilion.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? You put yourself out there. You're building something.
Yeah, they see the articles and stuff. I mean, they've been following me in the news.
Okay, they're not going to come here. Okay,
I don't think so. I mean, they're living in Manhattan, so like, I mean, anyone that knows anyone from New York knows they're.
When my friends come, they're amazed.
Right, and to your point, I think my parents would be like if they took the time to make it back out here and like actually gave some of the spots that. So I mean, again, I grew up in Squirrel Hill. Like, I mean, I like my dad thinks about the places he used to go to. Like, he still talks about Tesauro's, which is not a very nice place, but like if it's what you remember as being a nice place, from like 30 years ago, then it's like, I think
is that place even around?
I mean, it was like a year ago, but
in
I think
Bloomfield?
the same people were working there. Like it's very. Yeah, it's like
we'd have to show your dad around.
I think so, right? Like, I mean, if he saw like Guy Jin and like some of the new stuff, I think he would.
And the place we just went to.
Yeah, the Summit is awesome.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's one of my favorite spots. I found out about it from a client. We used to go there and we'd have way too much to drink, and we would review legal documents and like discuss project milestones, and we call them summit meetings.
That's perfect.
Right.
It's a great place.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a great place. The view of Mount Washington is insane.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, But I think for someone to have like, okay, so like Dan Bevan, our CFO at SKA Robotics, was telling me that he was in Lawrenceville in like, I want to say it was like the mid 2000s, and the Wendy's down there that's like by the Trip Hotel. So apparently he saw like a guy. Okay, so there's a guy walking along outside the Wendy's, and these two guys jumped out of a white van with machine guns, and like rifle butted the guy and threw him in the van and drove away. Like that was the thing that happened in broad daylight in Lawrenceville. Like when my dad remembers Lawrenceville from. And
it's not that.
No, it's not. It's super nice. People have like like adorable
It's a great place.
really expensive dogs and or like getting brunch and it's a lot of hipsters. It's nice.
A lot of locally owned businesses.
A lot of locally owned businesses. Yeah. Yeah, no, Lawrenceville's great. It's like one of my favorite places to hang out. I mean, they've got a great restaurant scene. I mean, like Robot Row, like all those businesses down there are kind of cool. I do kind of dislike how people think like, it's like part of Pittsburgh prestige is to have like a robotics company in Lawrenceville. Like I always thought that was kind of dumb. Like, I don't know. It's not the only place you can have a robotics company. Like there's a bunch of interesting clusters. Like Edge AI has their Homestead office, which I really like. I mean, we're in Harmer, as is Hellbender, as you know. Humotech also in that facility in Harmer. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's other spots.
There are.
I mean, the East End's got X Factory. Like, there's some good little clusters outside of Lawrenceville that people aren't talking about as much, I think.
I know. We hang our hat on things that are easy.
Well, it's because, like, NRAC, right? And, like, that was, like, there's that, to your point, like, that, kind of CMU loving itself and... that, and there is legacy there, and there is history. I mean, I love NRAC. So when I was a child, like in single digits, like in the 90s, I remember my dad's cousin was one of the first guys to get a PhD from the Robotics Institute, and Lee Weiss was his name, and he had like 36 patents, and he was a total nerd, but like very, very good at what he did. Kind of a mentor to me, and he took me on a tour of NRAC when I was a kid, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome! Like I want to do robotics, right? So special place in my heart, but it's not the only place or the only way to do robotics. Like there's so much more to the field and the discipline, and I think that's part of what makes us great is the fact that we can constantly reinvent ourselves and find new ways to tap into different local resources here.
No, it's good to hear you say that. It's
Nice.
good to hear you say that there's a wide span,
I think so, right?
and you can be almost anywhere in the city and do things.
Yeah, for sure. Are you happy that you left corporate and you went to nonprofit?
Very much. Well, I went to. Remember, I still sit on private boards. I do different things that always keep me sort of in another world. That's just sort of how I am. I'm always trying to figure out different ways to juggle things and keep my lens very wide.
Yeah.
So when you say like going from corporate to nonprofit,
It's really still corporate.
it's still, I don't view it that way. I feel like I have such a wide constituency, which makes it really interesting.
That's cool.
Sometimes frustrating, but very interesting.
I mean, just dealing with the members must be interesting, and then you've got the political stakeholders, and then you've got
The regional stakeholders, right?
right.
So you're always
And there's probably ones that aren't even visible to us that you know about.
Right.
So, like, yeah,
right.
that's
There's always
interesting.
that, and then dealing with what are the issues that are facing our region.
Right, and then it's probably like whose lens are you looking at that through, I would imagine. So, like, the issues that I have as the owner of a robotics company are probably different than the issues that a senator perceives. And
Or
those are
the
probably
issues
different
of
than the
or-
issues that the universities are facing.
Right. Or a company that's got 200 employees,
Sure.
right? And trying to figure that out. Or companies that are shrinking and swelling,
Right.
that are growing and shrinking and growing and closing and scaling and scaling.
Yeah.
And investors or no investors.
Right.
Like the variables are almost endless.
Right. Now that does make sense. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, not everyone wants an investor.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Because then sometimes we say as a region, oh, we're not doing that well because we don't have a lot of capital.
Well, it depends who you ask, right? So I've noticed that too. Like it seems like that answer's come up a lot, but I mean, to your point, yeah, it's not for everybody,
It's not. And it's not for every company.
right?
And it's not for every idea.
100%.
But for some ideas, it's critical.
Some ideas would never be able to happen without that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I hope someday that Pittsburgh is a place where across almost every aspect of innovation and technology, we're known as a place to make good bets.
What do you think needs to change for us to become known as that?
I think there's a couple of things. One is we need to have a lot of experienced entrepreneurs who are leaders and have had exits so that they can be around giving advice,
Yeah, that
sitting
makes
on
sense.
boards, throwing some dollars,
Working at Carnegie Mellon.
doing that kind of thing. I think we need more experienced entrepreneurs so that they can help lift others
Yeah.
and open up their contacts list and open up and bring people here.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing I love about working with Brian Beyer from Hellbender, right? Is he's very open and generous with, time and contacts and advice, and it's contagious.
It's critical to have a community.
For sure.
That local kind of business community is critical. Being able to bump into people. That is what people say about San Francisco. Like, you can't go work out at the gym or go to a bakery or go to a coffee shop without bumping into someone who's interested in your space, investing in your space, working in your space.
I mean, that can be
doing
good
some
and bad.
deals.
Like I remember, I like rock climbing, and for a while when I was going, I wouldn't even climb. Like, I would just network at the rock gym because there's like a pretty big tech community there, like even here.
Yeah, here there is.
And so, like, I don't know. Apparently that's a thing. Like in the Bay Area in particular, like, there's people that like don't even climb, that'll just get the gear and like walk around in order to network.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So
That's
at a
hilarious.
certain point, it's like a little bit like, okay, this is a bit much. Like,
Yeah.
probably should still be doing the thing.
So you're just wearing the gear and you're walking around?
I caught myself doing that for like, a
That's
good,
really bad,
yeah,
Spencer.
yeah. I mean, like these days I just don't go to the gym that often, which is even worse. But, at that point I remember, I was just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous.
Like, why even bother gearing up?
Right. I mean, well, because you got to be perceived to know what you're doing.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
So you got to be a little bit of a
Well,
poser.
and I also think, like, to be honest, as somebody that like genuinely has enjoyed rock climbing, like since I was in high school, like, there was a hope that I would do some climbing that day in my brain. I was like, I want to climb. I'm gonna. Oh shit! Look who it is over there. And so.
Wow, I didn't know that we had such a crowd of that here.
I mean, in certain places, I think it exists, right? I mean, like, I don't know. There's like certain events I'll go to where it's like, you're just shaking everyone's hand, and it can get exhausting, but also like, I mean, it can be.
Isn't that
enjoyable at times,
exhausting
too.
for you?
You mean just like
That kind of networking? Does that get exhausting?
Yes and no. So I mean, I'm naturally extroverted, so I think I like it on the one hand, but I have a limit. So like if I talk to, like at Discovery Day, right? I mean, according to the Pier End, there were like 6,500 people.
Oh
at that
my
event.
gosh.
And so, and we had the biggest booth there, so there was a lot of foot traffic. And, I remember, I don't know, just at the end of a day like that, like
Did you sleep for a month?
I didn't sleep for a month. I got up and did work the next day. But I mean, at the same time, you have a little bit of social burnout. I mean, like, I'm going to California next week to do a trade show there. And, I mean, we have a booth, and I'm sure I'm going to be on my feet, for like 12 hours a day for the whole week. And, I mean, it's okay. I'm used to being on my feet for 12, but like, I mean, some of it's on my butt, it's like I'm sitting at a desk, or, I'm working on a different diversity of tasks. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, when you have that many conversations, like 1,000 conversations, you can't really remember what they all were. And, you find yourself saying the same pitch over and over and over again, and that gets a little bit exhausting because, it's like, okay, I mean, I just said this to the last person.
Right.
But then people remember you, and they're like, hey, remember that? And I'm like, no, I got amnesia. I'm sorry. It's talk to a lot of
But
people.
you see yourself as an extrovert?
You don't?
No. That's
Fair enough.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've kind of always been that way, I think.
So you get your energy from being with people.
Yeah, it recharges me. I mean, I went down the path into engineering, and I found that, I took a job when I was, I don't know, whenever I did like IT jobs as a kid, it always was kind of like crossing the line because you're still interacting with people and, you're like stringing an Ethernet cable, and it's not really that cerebral. But then when I was in college, I got my first job as a programmer, and I just remember I was miserable. Like I was sitting at a desk in a cubicle like all day long, and I found, what am I doing? Like, I mean, I'm told I was good at it. Like, I mean, I was, apparently, because I had these existential crises, and I'd go to my boss. It was at a university, so I was a research programmer as a professor. And I'd go to my boss, and I'd be like, I don't think I'm any good at this,
Right.
And, he'd go like, you're doing great. What are you talking about? You're like meeting all of your deadlines, you're awesome. And I'd be like, I'm miserable, And so I don't think I said that last part to him. Like I kind of kept that to myself, but I just, I don't know, when I started to be able to lead people, and like even on like projects and initiatives and, engineering programs and stuff like that, like that's where I think I found my happy place. And then when I got into sales, I mean, like, I think that as well was a good fit for me.
That's cool.
Thanks.
I wouldn't have known that.
Fair enough. I guess we never discussed it.
Yeah, we never discussed that, so I never knew. Because, I mean, I'm an extrovert, but I need to recharge.
Yeah, well, I think we all have limits, right? Everybody's an ambivert to some extent.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's probably introverts. Like, if you had them in solitary confinement, they would go crazy, right?
I don't know. I think about it a lot. Think about, where do I get my energy from?
Yeah.
I get my energy from being around people who are winning, people who are building.
Yeah.
People who are, like, defying all odds.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's where I get my
energy. Yeah, I like
energy.
that too, right? Like, I mean, I want to hang out with people that are ambitious and striving to do better,
right,
and driven, and it's a good influence on me, first of all, and like, yeah,
because you'd be watching TV all day long if you weren't around them.
Well, I'd probably be in prison. Like, I mean, just,
that's what I say.
Stimulation, yeah.
That's what I say. I say I do this kind of work. It keeps me out of prison.
Right. Same here.
Well, this has been fun, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I guess if we're winding down, is there anything you want to plug on the tail end of the episode?
What do I want to plug? That Pittsburgh is an insanely great place for people to be. And with all the changes that are going on in the world, this is in many ways a little safe haven for people who are ridiculously smart and want to change the world.
Hear, hear.
Join us.
Join us.
But don't come here if you don't want to be helpful.
Sure, yeah.
Just come here if you want to drive change. We don't need people who are being critical of what we don't have. Come here to be additive.
Amen. Thanks for joining us today. If you've made it this far, chances are you'll like other episodes too. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Subscribe today to get notified when the latest episodes release and support the channel. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.